A looming figure stands amongst the trees as you begin to feel the freeze of fear overtake the freeze of the bitter winter. Although much taller than any man, its body is emaciated beyond belief. Where its lips should be, there are only bloody shreds of skin. It stares you down with eyes that are filled with one thing: insatiable hunger. Wendigos, portrayed in pop culture as large creatures that have human-like bodies but a head that resembles a deer skull, actually have their roots in Native American folklore. Hi, I'm Kit, and as I was doing research in preparation for this video, I found myself peeling back layer after layer. The deeper I dug, the more meaningful the story of the Wendigo became to me, and I want to take you on a similar journey. As we progress through this video, we'll begin to understand not only what the Wendigo is, but also the cultural significance that these stories have to the peoples they come from, as well as how these stories are still relevant for us today. Also, I have an announcement about the channel at the end of this video, so make sure you stick around for that. Wendigos, or Wendigos, Wendigos, Weticos, and honestly the list could go on, as I mentioned earlier, originate from Native American folklore, specifically from the Algonquin people. These tribes, which were located in much of Canada, New England, and the Great Lakes region, are part of the same language group and include the Ojibwe, Cree, Blackfoot, Cheyenne, and many others. The Wendigo is one of many Manitos from Algonquin mythology. Now, trying to describe what exactly a Manito is in English can be a little bit tricky because the word relates to so many different things. A Manito is a type of spiritual representation. In his book, The Manitos, The Supernatural World of the Ojibwe, native scholar and author Basil Johnston states, "Mystery is but one of the connotations of the word Manito. The word has other meanings as well: spiritual, mystical, supernatural, godlike or spirit-like, quiddity, essence. It is in these other senses that the word is often used and is to be understood, not just in the context of Manito beings." Manito refers to realities other than the physical ones, to the unseen realities of individual beings and places and events that are beyond human understanding but are still clearly real. With this quote in mind as we go forward, Wendigos are a type of almost spiritual beings, but they're not necessarily spirits. More on that in a bit. There are, as with most spiritual-based stories, lessons we can learn from the legend of the Wendigo. But, of course, we must first understand exactly what a Wendigo is. While Wendigos are often portrayed with deer skull heads, this is only the interpretation in pop culture. It's not really clear when this portrait of the Wendigo first appeared, but the idea of the Wendigo first reached the general public through Algernon Blackwood's novella, simply titled The Wendigo, first published in 1910. This story, however, has little to do with the true Wendigo of folklore. There isn't even any mention of cannibalism, which, as we will discuss later, is a core part of Wendigo lore. Instead, Blackwood uses the Wendigo to, in a way, personify the call of the wild. There's also a decent amount of racist themes, such as referring to Native Americans as savages or animalistic, which may have had some effect on why the modern Wendigo has this altered visage, as many modern-day depictions of the Wendigo draw on Blackwood's version of the creature. Think Stephen King's Pet Sematary or the 2021 film Antlers. Although there's virtually no physical description of the creature given in Blackwood's novella, the story did appear in pulp magazine Famous Fantastic Mysteries in June of 1944, accompanied by an illustration by Matt Fox. This picture, as far as I could find, is the first instance of the Wendigo being depicted with antlers. Regardless, this video is not a review of Blackwood's novella. Rather, it's a look at the true Wendigo of Native American legend. According to Basil Johnston, the term Wendigo may be derived from Wendigo, which means solely for self, or weaning ndigo, which means fat or excessive, with both of these possibilities referencing the Wendigo's relation to extreme hunger or excess. One thing that is constant through every iteration of the Wendigo is the creature's hunger for human flesh, as well as its link to extreme cold. When it comes to the original Wendigo legends, the term refers to three main yet intertwined types of Wendigos. The Wendigo as a large, monstrous creature, the winter spirits and those they possessed, or a man or woman who resorted to cannibalism, usually due to starvation. First, let's talk about the type of Wendigo I alluded to during the intro to this video, namely monstrous, cannibalistic giants. The Wendigo is a creature driven solely by its insatiable hunger for human flesh, its sole purpose being to satisfy that hunger, which is the unfortunate irony of the Wendigo. The creature's hunger would drive it to eat the flesh of men, which would cause it, as well as its hunger, to grow. This would cause the Wendigo to seek out more to eat, which would cause its hunger to grow even more. It's a vicious cycle that never ends. Of course, since there are different stories of the Wendigo that vary by tribe, the description of the creature also varies. Going back to the Manitos, Johnston paints a great visual. The Wendigo was a giant manito in the form of a man or woman who towered 5 to 8 times above the height of a tall man. But the Wendigo was a giant in height only. In girth and strength, it was not. Because it was afflicted with never-ending hunger and could never get enough to eat, it was always on the verge of starvation. The Wendigo was gaunt to the point of emaciation, its desiccated skin pulled tautly over its bones, its complexion the ash gray of death, and its eyes pushed back deep into their sockets. The Wendigo looked like a gaunt skeleton, recently disinterred from the grave. What lips it had were tattered and bloody from its constant chewing with jagged teeth. Unclean and suffering from suppurations of the flesh, the Wendigo gave off a strange and eerie odor of decay and decomposition, of death and corruption. Johnston goes on to describe a supernatural cold that followed the Wendigo. Cold, of course, being another factor connected to the creature. In fact, some legends claim that the only way to kill a Wendigo is to carve out its heart, which is more akin to a block of solid ice, and melt it in a roaring fire. There is also tale of those who died of fear from only laying eyes on this creature, or even just hearing its inhuman cry. These people, of course, were considered the lucky ones. Wendigos were also typically described as having superhuman speed and strength. They were unparalleled hunters. While these creatures are quite terrifying, there are some stories that describe the Wendigo as some sort of ice or winter spirit. Some stories claim that these spirits were able to invade the dreams of people. If a person was bit by a Wendigo spirit in their dreams, the Wendigo could enter that person, possessing them. The Wendigo was also said to be able to warp or weaken the minds of its victims, causing them to become more deranged, violent, and, of course, cannibalistic. People who were prone to greed or gluttony were especially susceptible to possession by the Wendigo. Of course, there are more to Wendigos than monsters, or at least monsters as we may think of them. To the Native Americans, there was nothing more reprehensible than cannibalism. It was their biggest fear as soon as supplies started to dwindle in the harsh of winter. When one did turn to cannibalism, it was referred to as turning Wendigo. One documented case of someone turning Wendigo is that of Cree hunter and trapper Swift Runner, who killed and cannibalized his family in the winter of 1878 to 79. And that's a story that I might cover in a future video. In the early 20th century, the term Wendigo psychosis was coined by psychologists. The American Psychological Association defines Wendigo psychosis as a severe culture-bound syndrome occurring among northern Algonquin Indians living in Canada and the northeastern United States. The syndrome is characterized by delusions of becoming possessed by a flesh-eating monster, the Wendigo, and is manifested in symptoms including depression, violence, a compulsive desire for human flesh, and sometimes actual cannibalism. The existence of this syndrome is debated in the scientific community. Regardless of its existence, however, there is no doubt that the stories of the Wendigo held a much deeper meaning to those early Native Americans. The stories of the Wendigo were not only a warning against the evils of consuming the flesh of another human being, even when facing harsh winters and the threat of starvation, but also a warning against excess in general. They're about the importance of self-control, moderation, and, above all, community. The tales of the Wendigo are symbolic of how excess preys on excess. In most legends, the Wendigo could, ironically, only feast on those who indulged in their own self-interest. In fact, there are even some legends where the Wendigo would reward moderation. The story of the Wendigo shows how once someone indulges in the things of the world, it can snowball into this greater need for indulgence. While there's nothing wrong with rest, celebration, play, or hobbies, there are some people who don't know when or don't care to stop. This is what the story of the Wendigo is all about. With this in mind, one may argue that Wendigos still exist and may even be prevalent in modern day. The Wendigos of legend never vanished. They simply morphed and adapted into something new. Over time, the story of the Wendigo became a symbol of those who stole from the Native Americans, those who took their land and forced people from their homes. Returning once more to Johnston's The Manitos, he says this of the Wendigo in modern times. It appeared as if the Wendigos had passed into the great beyond, like many North American Indian beliefs and practices and traditions. Actually, the Wendigos did not die out or disappear. They have only been assimilated and reincarnated as corporations, conglomerates, and multinationals. They've even taken on new names, acquired polished manners, and renounced their cravings for raw human flesh in return for more refined viands. The Wendigos of today are those who are motivated by greed. They only care about gain, about how they can obtain a greater wealth. They care only for profit and power. And what has been the result of this self-serving, gluttonous disposition? In 10 short decades, these modern Wendigos have accomplished what once seemed impossible. They have laid waste to immense tracts of forest that were seen as beyond limit as well as self-propagating, ample enough to serve this generation and many more to come. These new Wendigos are no different from their forebears. In fact, they are even more omnivorous than their old ancestors. The only difference is that the modern Wendigos wear elegant clothes and comport themselves with an air of cultured and dignified respectability. But still the Wendigos bring disaster, fueled by the unquenchable greed inherent in human nature. Perhaps, as in the past, some champion will fell them. One thing that I love about the stories of the Wendigo, as well as many other stories from folklore, are the lessons that we can learn from them. They teach us not only morals, but also about the people that they come from. The legend of the Wendigo teaches us that moderation and community are of great importance. It also teaches us that the Wendigo can be defeated, even in modern day. So, quick announcement. Since I started uploading videos, I've released a video every other week. However, all those videos that I've released had scripts written by the time I started recording. And this is the final script that I had already prepared. Meaning, as we move forward, there will be more time between uploads. Hopefully, it's only going to add a week, so I'm planning on uploading every 3 weeks instead of every other week, but we'll just have to see how things go moving forward, because I do have other things that I need to focus on outside of these videos, although I do really enjoy making them, and I really hope you guys are enjoying watching them. I want to make videos that are worth the time that you spend watching them, which I'll need more time to be able to do. But I hope you guys stick around, and I really do enjoy making these, and I hope you enjoy watching them as well. Anyways, that'll do it for this video. Thank you guys honestly so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing and giving it a like. It really helps early on with growth for the channel. Again, I honestly appreciate you guys watching, and I'll see you next time.